Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. I appreciate you all, guys, whether you're watching me on YouTube, on Rumble, on X, and on my personal profile on Facebook. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Today's live streaming is going to be very, very interesting. I've been preparing for it since early morning because I found the news that the BRICS Plus, they are going to issue some sort of a blockchain system, and this could be operational in 2025. And this will, of course, help the countries to deal among each other without the dollar in a parallel economic system than the SWIFT. And also the countries that are sanctioned can deal again among each other and with the rest of the world without being obliged to deal with the dollars, which they are not allowed to do so because the United States weaponized the dollar against these countries in order to exert pressure on them and force them to change their policies, their behavior. You behave or else. This is the rules-based order that the United States is leading nowadays. So the alternative powers are trying to build parallel economic systems in order to bypass the American dollar and the American-dominated SWIFT system. But before we discuss this very important developing issue, I just want to say, guys, that last month, in the past 30 years, Syriana Analysis has hit 1 million views. At no time I had 1 million views in 1 month. And it seems that last month was very interesting for you also. Thank you so much, guys, for watching the live streamings, the videos that I'm posting on this channel. It means a lot to me because I put so much work and it makes me so much, I become so much happy when I see the appreciation, when the people watch and encourage and also give constructive criticism, one of which is that I should shorten cut the countdown. So from now on, it's going to be only 30 seconds countdown, and I will start speaking about the recent developments. So today, I also would like to focus on one other issue prior to speaking about the BRICS blockchain and the parallel economic system and financial system that the rising powers are establishing, and that is Ukraine. Ukraine is very important because Ukraine is going to shape and change the world as we know it. The balance of power is shifting on the international level due to this proxy war between Russia and NATO in Ukraine. And accordingly, we are seeing rising powers such as China and Russia are getting emboldened. And due to the emboldenment of Moscow and Beijing, the smaller countries, let's say, or less influential countries, and especially in the global south, especially in the countries that are struggling with American imperialism and neocolonialism in different forms and shapes, they are encouraging the rising powers in Russia and China to increase the level of the alliances among them, which, according to the global south countries and the governments, they believe that this will reflect positively on their countries and on their people. So today I was checking the news in Ukraine, and our friend and colleague Rachel Blevins, she said, it's getting bad for Kiev when even the CNN is describing the frontline situation as a, quote, nightmare. So according to the CNN, the front lines in Ukraine are nightmare for Ukraine as Russia goes on the offensive, capturing 9 villages in less than a week. And she hosted the Russian military expert Andrei Martyanov, who noted that Moscow's latest gains shouldn't come as a surprise, and there is very little NATO can do as members of the alliance continue to try to keep Kiev on life support while their forces crumble on the battlefield. I agree with this assessment that the NATO countries and the governments are keeping, especially the United States, the UK, are keeping the Ukraine on life support Unfortunately, though, the people in Ukraine are the ones paying the highest price. So I prepared a short 3.5 minutes video about what was happening in Ukraine, especially with the calls from Lithuania and Estonia, I believe, that they are calling for sending ground troops to Ukraine. And I made this short video I would like to show you, and we will come back after it. Estonian officials are currently discussing the possibility of deploying ground troops to western Ukraine. This dangerous move allegedly aims to alleviate the burden on Ukrainian forces by taking over non-combat missions, allowing them to focus on the front lines. In other words, they are going to allow more Ukrainian men, or whoever is still alive, to go to the meat grinder. But who cares for the Ukrainians, right? They are seen as cannon fodders against Russia. Similarly, Lithuanian officials have proposed an ad hoc coalition of Western countries to send military training personnel into Ukraine, backed by ground-based air defense systems. Let me explain why this decision is risky and reckless. For starters, Russia will view NATO troops in Ukraine as legitimate targets, and this will bring us one step closer to direct confrontation between the nuclear powers. It is crucial to consider the consequences before dismissing it with a casual "who cares?" Engaging in such a nuclear war will have catastrophic consequences for humanity. Trust me, there are far better alternatives to pursue. Second, although Russia has the manpower to mobilize if NATO troops are deployed in Ukraine, it is possible that other countries could come to Russia's help. Many nations in the global south are ready to stand with Russia against NATO because they view the Ukraine proxy war as crucial for breaking free from US imperialism. Third, ask yourself this question: can Ukraine defeat Russia? The resounding answer is a firm no. So why would anyone jeopardize everything for the sake of a corrupt government in Kiev? A government that shamelessly loots our hard-earned tax money instead of fortifying Kharkov, allowing the funds to vanish into the pockets of fake companies. Now, someone might argue that the West is protecting Ukraine's sovereignty from foreign aggression and upholding the rules-based order. Seriously? Then why didn't we hear the same language advocating for international law during the relentless brutal assault on the Palestinians in Gaza? Now, I want you to watch this video of a Ukrainian soldier sending a video message to his mother, and just think about it.
Всім привіт. Я ще живий. Вчора нас сильно потріпало. Мам, пробач мене, будь ласка. Я обіцяв, що приїду додому. Я очень тебя люблю. Мамусь. Я обіцяю, що зроблю усе, щоб лежати рядом з тобою. Мені дуже тяжко. Я устав, мама. Я так не хочу більше воювати. Ну, це того не стоїть, мама. Я тебе очень люблю.
I don't want to fight anymore. It's not worth it, Mama. I just want you to feel for this young man who was forced to go and fight this proxy war, whereas the politicians are deciding his fate. Of course, his chances to survive this is very limited. And we've been discussing this for a long time. So, in my opinion, this is not only a situation where foreign powers are urging Ukraine to continue fighting because there is a hope for a win. There is no hope for victory for them. And the last counteroffensive by Ukraine has proven that no amount of weapons and ammunition can change the situation, because the manpower of the Russian side and the production levels of military equipment and repairing the damaged ones is just Russia alone can surpass the entire NATO countries, right? And with the backing of China nowadays, it's getting very difficult. It's impossible. It's not almost impossible. It's impossible. Therefore, I call for a ceasefire. I call for peace talks in Ukraine, just like I'm calling for the same in the Gaza Strip. And one of the commentators was doing like mocking this little young man, and I would not encourage you to do that. If you were in his place, you may have you may do the same, because you don't know his conditions and how much traumatized he is, and the amount of artillery power that he is facing in front of him, right? So I wouldn't encourage that. And I would like to show you the map of control over Ukraine nowadays. And this is a pro-Ukrainian website, just for you to know. And you see these these logos. Those are all the front lines where there is infighting nowadays, and where the Russian forces are advancing. Now, I would like, during that, while you were watching this map, I would like to read to you what the CNN said in this regard. So they say the changing language used by the Ukrainian military in 72 hours of daily updates tells the story. Quote, ongoing defensive fighting, quote, significantly worsened, quote, Russian tactical success. Those terms are coming from the Ukrainian military statements. And the CNN says you rarely ever hear Kiev's top brass sounding downbeat, but their steep southerly trajectory reflects the grave place Ukraine finds itself in. Russia is not just advancing slowly in one place, it appears to be advancing in four across the front line. Moscow knows it is on the clock. In about a month, the 61 billion of US military aid will start to translate into Ukraine, having the weapons it has been begging for. So Russian President Vladimir Putin seems to be throwing whatever he can at it, knowing the fight will likely only get tougher for his forces in the summer. This is according to the CNN. So the first front that the Russians are advancing, and this is in the northern border near Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city. Russian forces have crossed the border in multiple locations in claim to have seized 9 villages. They moved 3 to 4 miles into Ukraine in the border area above Ukraine's second city of Kharkiv. Is arguably their fastest advance since the first days of the war. Then we have the town of Liptsi, which is at risk, say some military bloggers, and from there, Russian forces could hit Kharkiv with artillery. This is a nightmare, says the CNN, for Kiev for 2 reasons. Firstly, they liberated this land from Russian forces 18 months ago, yet failed clearly to fortify the area enough to prevent Moscow sweeping back with the ease with which they were swept out. And secondly, Russia can again tie up Ukraine's overstretched army with constant and grinding pressure on Kharkiv, exacting a toll with crude shelling on a vast urban center. Then there is the rest of the front lines, guys, where progress in Kharkiv region has been mirrored by old, exhausting fights suddenly seeing new Russian success. This should be the greatest cause of concern to Kiev, as it suggests a coordinated bid to push in all directions and leave Ukrainian President Zelensky with ugly choices about where to send limited resources and where ultimately to sacrifice. Moving slowly south from Kharkiv, closer to Bakhmut, we have the town of Chasiv Yar has been under intense pressure, a valuable height above 2 key Ukrainian military towns, Kramatorsk and Slovyansk, which could prove an exhaustive pressure point over the summer on Kiev supply lines. Then we have Nataylov and Krasnohorivka, slightly further south of show that the Russian forces making further gains to the west of Avdiivka and threatening another key hub, Pokrovsk. If Ukraine begins to fall back further here, its grip on the remnants of Donetsk region could be at risk. And then overnight, Deep State Map, a Ukrainian military analysis group, said the southern village of Verbov was under great threat. One of the minimal gains from Kiev's stymied summer counteroffensive last year. All across the board, the news is bad. It is growing. It is a growing calamity. This is, guys, I was quoting you the CNN. It's not a pro-Russian website. It's not a pro-Russian commentator and analyst was telling some Russian propaganda, for example. This is coming from the CNN, and they see the situation is very dire there. And since this article mentioned the fortifications in Kharkiv and why they are missing, or there are missing fortifications in Kharkiv, despite the fact that they have been prepared for this scenario for around a year. And this article, it reveals a lot of information about companies that Zelensky has given them the, what to say, like they give them the access into the country to build these fortifications. And many of these fortifications that were supposed to be built have never seen light. And many of these companies, multinational companies who came to Ukraine to help the Ukrainians build these fortifications, have pocketed the money, and they have made hundreds of millions of dollars. So the question that I asked in this short video that I broadcasted today, why would we send more of our taxpayer money to corrupt government? I mean, if your money, which is like with billions of dollars being sent to Ukraine, and this money has been used in a proper way to build fortifications to stop the advances of the Russian forces, then those who are pro-Ukrainian would argue that, yes, we want to send more of our taxpayer money, but if the Ukrainian side is so corrupt that they're not even spending and investing this money in building the least thing, and that is fortifications, in order to curb the advances of the Russians. We're not even talking about counteroffensive. We're only speaking about the defense lines, right? To stop the advances of the Russians. And this is the minimum bar of this, I would say, condition that I would like to ask for the Ukrainians before sending my taxpayer money to Ukraine, right? This is the least to say. But Antony Blinken, he was in Ukraine, and of course he had some BS to repeat from Ukraine, and he says, I've come to Ukraine with a message. You're not alone. America is with you. Take a look.
I have come to Ukraine with a message. You are not alone. The United States has been by your side from day one. We are with you today, and we will stay by your side until Ukraine's security, its sovereignty, its ability to choose its own path is guaranteed. And we're far from your only friend. Dozens of countries around the world are not just rooting for Ukraine's success, they're helping you achieve it.
Guys, with friends like this, who needs an enemy, right? And when I watched this video, I remembered one of the statements of the former Egyptian president Hosni Mubarak, who was himself an ally of the United States. He said in Arabic, "Al-Mutghatti bil-Ameriki Aryan," which means like those whose only cover is America are naked. So those who rely on America were basically saying America is unreliable. He said, quote, those whose only cover is America are naked. This is from the late Egyptian president Hosni Mubarak, who was himself an ally of the United States. Interesting statement, in my opinion. And after this statement, when Blinken assured Ukraine and the Ukrainians that victory is in the sight and that America is always going to be on the side of Ukraine to assure that Ukraine preserves its sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the sovereign decision making, basically, which of course they don't enjoy that, unfortunately speaking, because they have become a de facto NATO ruling system, let's say the least to say, in Kiev. Antony Blinken, after saying all this strong militaristic and political speech, he went to a bar in Kiev. I don't know who told him that this is a good idea to go to the bar. However, he was in a bar and he had some performance for us. If you were Ukrainian and you watched this video, how would you feel about it? The Secretary of State of the United States visiting my country, which we are basically fighting the fight of the Americans, he goes to a bar and sings and plays some instruments. It just reminds me of the Iraqi political activist when he threw his sandals on George Bush after the end of the war. I think that would be a proper way of receiving him and sending him back to his country. It's ridiculous what they're doing. And all this talk about assurances, American assurances. America assures that we are your ally and we're not going to leave you alone. Seriously? I mean, I still remember when Joe Biden he was telling that you're not alone, America is with you in Afghanistan, and he assured that the United States has trained and armed the Afghani police and military, and they have 300,000 soldiers to counter Taliban, and Taliban will not be able to govern Afghanistan again. They assured us. You remember that? So let's see these assurances. How
is a Taliban takeover of Afghanistan now inevitable?
No, it is not. Because you have the Afghan troops have 300,000 well equipped as any army in the world, and an air force against something like 75,000 Taliban. It is not inevitable.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Your own intelligence community has assessed that the Afghan government will likely collapse.
Man, he looks great.
That's not true.
Can you please clarify what they have told you about whether that will happen or not?
That is not true. They did not reach that conclusion.
So what is the level of confidence that they have that it will not collapse?
The Afghan government and leadership has to come together. They clearly have the capacity to sustain the government in place.
And do you see any parallels between this withdrawal and what happened in Vietnam, with some people feeling?
None whatsoever. Zero. What you had entire brigades breaking through the gates of our embassy. 6, if I'm not mistaken. The Taliban is not the North Vietnamese army. They're not remotely comparable in terms of capability. There's going to be no circumstance where you see people being lifted off the roof of a embassy of the United States from Afghanistan. It is not at all comparable. So the question now is, where do they go from here? That the jury is still out. But the likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely.
It's highly unlikely, guys. So what happened? The United States spent $3 trillion in Afghanistan to replace Taliban with Taliban, and they left how much of weapons in the hands of Taliban, right? And I will not criticize Taliban anymore. I know it's an organic movement in Afghanistan. I respect the Afghani customs and traditions, and if they like Taliban, let them have Taliban. I don't have anything against them. I just differ with them in their mindset, in their ideology, in their how see life. But if the Afghani people want Taliban, then let it be Taliban. But the point that I'm trying to make, that the American assurances doesn't mean anything. It didn't mean anything for so many other countries, so many situations, that the Americans left them alone in the face of their enemies. And the Afghani police and the armed forces, they have laid their arms down and they just gave everything to Taliban, right? And since we were talking about, I showed you this video of Biden. Yesterday, Biden declared that he will impose, he just imposed tariffs on goods made in China. 25% on steel and aluminium, 50% on semiconductors, 100% on electronic vehicles, and 50% on solar panels. He says China is determined to dominate these industries. I'm determined to ensure America leads the world in them. So just for you to know, guys, this is the same Joe Biden who tweeted this when Trump imposed tariffs on the Chinese products. And he said, yet more proof that Donald Trump doesn't care about the farmers, workers, and consumers that are being crushed by his irresponsible tariff war with China. It's easy to act tough when someone else is feeling the pain. I will reverse his senseless policies. This is Joe Biden. It's not me. It is Joe Biden, guys. And it goes funnier because he has another tweet here. Trump doesn't get the basics, he says. He thinks his tariffs are being paid by China. Any freshman economist student could tell you that the American people are paying his tariffs. The cashiers at Target see what's going on. They know more about economics than Trump. This was him, guys. So he did the same, like Trump, right? And how did the Chinese react in this regard? The Chinese, this is from the China Daily. They say Western officials and experts voiced deep concern over US President Joe Biden's decision to impose punitive tariffs on Chinese electronic vehicles, solar cells, batteries, steel and aluminum, and critical minerals worth $18 billion. The German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson expressed their reservations about possible European Union tariffs on Chinese electronic vehicles when asked about Biden's announcement during their press conference in Stockholm on Tuesday. Scholz stressed that half of electronic vehicles imported from China were made actually by Western manufacturers. The Colorado governor, Jared Polis, a Democrat, said on X, this is horrible news for American consumers and a major setback for clean energy. Now, it's widely believed that Biden's decision is aimed to win more union voters just 6 months ahead of the 2024 US presidential election. But studies by multiple US think tanks have shown the former US President Donald Trump's punitive tariffs on China, which Biden has kept, have failed to bring jobs back to the United States, but hurt US consumers and drove up inflation. And this is the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. This is his statement about the tariffs that the United States has imposed. Around half of Chinese electronic cars, guys, these imports come from Western manufacturers. This is according to Olaf Scholz. Speaking at a joint conference with his Swedish counterpart during his 2-day trip to Stockholm, Scholz pointed out the many overlaps and mutual exchanges between China and the EU. I will show you this video. There are English subtitles.
Allerdings möchte ich darauf hinweisen, dass gegenwärtig jedenfalls 50% der Importe von Elektrofahrzeugen aus China von westlichen Marken kommen, die selber dort produzieren und nach Europa importieren. Das ist vielleicht auch ein Unterschied zu anderen Ländern und Nordamerika in dieser Frage, dass das eben so viel Verwicklung gibt und wechselseitigen Austausch. Sollten nicht vergessen, europäische Hersteller, auch einige amerikanische, aber europäische Hersteller sind erfolgreich auf dem chinesischen Markt und verkaufen auch sehr viele Fahrzeuge, die in Europa produziert werden, nach China.
Last question goes to Ulf Kristoffersson from TV4 over here.
Jag brukar också säga att koalitionsregeringar är spännande och jag står alltid på regeringens sida. Vi känner igen det där. När det gäller importtullarna så tror jag vi i grund och botten har stark samsyn att det är en dålig idé att börja söndermontera den globala handeln. Men ett bredare handelskrig där vi stoppar varandras produkter, det är i grund och botten inte framtiden för stora industriländer som Tyskland och Sverige.
So I'm happy to see that the Swedish and the German leaders refuse to partake and participate in this trade war against China, as it will reflect negatively on their own economies and the inflation levels and the imports of many of the goods coming from China. Like, there are vehicles and engines that are built or assembled, for example, in some of the European countries, such as Germany. Those parts and this equipment or technology comes from China. And this was an information that I tried to double check and I found on a Chinese website, CGTN. And they say a tariff fight against China, contrary to Washington's wishful thinking, will make ordinary Americans the largest victim. To begin with, tariff tax tariffs tax the consumer. Admittedly, few Chinese electronic vehicles are sold in the United States, so the immediate impact of the tariff on American consumers will be minimal. But the deep integration of global supply chains means the US market will be inevitably harmed by the hike. The US already imports substantial amounts of material from China for its own electronic vehicle production. According to the US Department of Transportation, American electronic vehicle brands, including Tesla and Ford Mustang, have 30 to 51% Chinese content. So if you tax and increase the tariffs on this product, then the American companies like Tesla and Ford Mustang that will produce these cars, the cost will increase, like it will skyrocket. We're speaking about 30 to 51% of these components of these cars are Chinese contents. So shutting the door on China's high quality and cost efficient materials will inevitably drive up the cost of electronic vehicle production, batteries, and other hardware in the United States. In this context, Biden's tariff hike against China is in fact a strike against his domestic firms relying on Chinese materials, with American consumers paying the final price. The problem with the United States is that if they don't like the foreign policy of some country, they impose sanctions. And if they see that in a fair, if there is a fair competition in an open market, they're not able to compete with countries like China. So they have created this new term called overcapacity, that China should avoid overcapacity, which means they shouldn't produce as much as they're producing at the moment, because there is no need for the markets for such a production. And this means if you produce a lot, then the cost will decrease. So this is harming the American production and the cost of production. It's like crazy. Why would China produce over its capacity? If there is no market, why would they produce, right? So it's not for them in a fair game, in a fair competition, they cannot beat China. So they're going to impose sanctions on Chinese companies, or they will increase the tariffs, which is suicide for them. But because the Americans have weaponized the dollar, weaponized the sanctions, I mean, America has no right to impose any sanctions on any entity around the world. You know that, right? It's illegal. The only way to impose sanctions is through the UN Security Council. And if the UN doesn't pass such a resolution, America doesn't have the right to exclude entire countries from the SWIFT, for example, because they dominate it. So they can exclude countries like Iran, like Russia, like China, like Syria. China isn't yet, but I'm just saying for an argument's sake, Syria, my country, right? It's crazy. Like they're waging economic warfare through the institutions that they have a domination on, right? So that's why the alternative powers, and especially represented by the BRICS, and this is the topic of today's live stream, they are looking for alternative ways to bypass the SWIFT, bypass the US dollar, right? And I was positively surprised. First, I saw that Pepe Escobar is publishing an article about this, and I found this article in the blockchain magazine, and they say BRICS bet on blockchain, an amazing politics-free payment system. Is it possible in 2024? Just a spoiler alert, it could be possible in 2025. So the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, have set their sights on a new frontier, a blockchain-based payment system designed to be independent and free from political influence. The BRICS nations' plan for a politics-free blockchain-based payment system is an ambitious attempt to create a financial network independent of traditional politically influenced systems. Here is a breakdown of what this means. So first, free from external influence. Currently, the US dollar dominates international settlements, giving the US significant power. So BRICS aims to bypass this by creating a system not reliant on a single politically charged currency. 2, leveraging blockchain. Blockchain technology offers a decentralized platform where transactions are secure, transparent, and verifiable. This reduces the risk of manipulation, often associated with centralized, politically controlled systems. 3, the ideal but not guaranteed. a truly politics-free system is a complex idea. The BRICS governments will still be involved, and finding a balance between efficiency and member state control will be crucial. And finally, fourth, focus on efficiency and transparency. The goal is to create a faster, more cost-effective system compared to traditional options. Blockchain's core features can theoretically facilitate this by streamlining transactions and reducing the need for intermediaries. What do you think about this idea, guys? Do you think it is possible to be implemented and translated into reality? And while you're watching this, I just want to thank you for tuning in. We are around 850 people watching on different platforms. It's great. While you're watching, if you can hit the like button, I would really appreciate that, guys, because it's very important for this content to be pushed for others. And just check that if you're subscribed or not. We have hit today 68,000 subscription goal, and I think it would be great if you could reach the 70,000 subscription in this month, in 2 weeks. I think that's possible if we could hit 70,000. So I would really appreciate it if you can subscribe or invite your friends to subscribe to this YouTube channel. So what did Pepe Escobar say in this case? He published an article in the Sputnik in this case, and he says, de-dollarization bombshell, the coming of BRICS plus decentralized monetary ecosystem. So welcome to the unit. The name of this currency or the platform, the blockchain, will be called the unit. So welcome to the unit, a concept that has already been discussed by the Financial Services and Investments Working Group set up by the BRICS Plus Business Council and has a serious shot at becoming official BRICS policy as early as in 2025. This is a new problem-solving system that addresses the key geoeconomic issues of these troubled times, a global crisis of trust. The global majority has had enough of the centrally controlled monetary framework put in place 80 years ago in Bretton Woods and its endemic flaws. Chronic deficits fueling irresponsible military spending, speculative bubbles, politically motivated sanctions and secondary sanctions, abuse of settlement and payments infrastructure, protectionism, and the lack of fair arbitration. In contrast, the unit proposes a reliable, quick, and economically efficient solution for cross-border payments. The transactional unit is a game changer as a new form of international currency that can be issued in a decentralized way and then recognized and regulated at national level. So there could also be a digital currency attributed to this blockchain, which could be adopted later by the people in these countries, like Bitcoin in El Salvador. The unit offers a unique solution for bottlenecks in global financial infrastructure. It is eligible for traditional banking operations as well as for the newest forms of digital banking. The strength of the unit conceptually is to remove direct dependency on the currency of other nations and to offer, especially to the global South majority, a new form of apolitical money with huge potential for anchoring fair trade and investments. It is indeed a new concept in terms of an international currency anchored in gold 40% and BRICS currency 60%. It is neither crypto nor stable coin as it's shown here. So this international currency that could be adopted by the BRICS Plus economic group will be backed by 40% of gold and 60% of the currencies of the BRICS Plus countries. Amazing. And what is the unit? Like, they even have this website already ready. And I just checked, this is their website called the Unit Ecosystem. It's unitfoundation.org. If you like to, I just subscribed to receive a newsletter when they started, so that you could also, if you want to subscribe, the website is unitfoundation.org. So this is what they say about themselves. They say it's apolitical money. Unit offers an apolitical form of money that is not influenced by any political agenda, ensuring stability and neutrality. They say open payment and clearing system. Unit can be used as currency for payments via any open payment and clearing system, providing flexibility and convenience. Global accessibility. Unit can be freely bought, sold, and used as a currency worldwide, enabling seamless cross-border transactions. Decentralized and transparent. Unit ecosystem operates on a decentralized network, ensuring transparency and security for all transactions. They are raising 1,000 Bitcoin. If you have Bitcoins, you can participate in the project backing this new project. In exchange, I think they're offering pre-unit tokens, and each being an equivalent of 1 gram of gold. Like, this is how they say on their website. I would like to hear your opinions about this, because I think this is an exciting news for the majority in the global south and also for the countries that live under sanctions, especially Syria. I hope the Syrian government is following such cases, because usually they are the last to hear about these things. They have good relations with all the BRICS countries. I hope they are aware of this development and could also pass by or circumvent these sanctions through this blockchain in the future. Guys, as you see, Russia and China are increasingly coming together, and it is unavoidable nowadays, this increase, the boostings of their relationship and their alliance. Because the United States is not accepting for Russia and China to be part of the rules-based international order and being instrumental in the policy making, decision making of the global affairs. So they are building parallel international system. They're building parallel financial system, just like this. And just for you to know, Putin will travel to China again very, very soon. And The Economist have published an article. They say Vladimir Putin will meet his big brother in Beijing. They say in March last year, China's leader Xi Jinping paused at the door of the Kremlin. Before bidding farewell to Vladimir Putin, he offered him a final thought, using the phrase "Bainyan Bianyu." This is a shorthand for what China views as a historic change in the world order. Mr. Xi said, "Let us promote it together." So let us promote together the new historic change in the world order. This is what Xi told Putin on the last moment before he left. Now the two leaders are meeting for the 43rd time. Mr. Putin is due to arrive in Beijing on May 16th, it's like tomorrow, right? Yeah. So tomorrow is going to arrive to China. And as the war rages in Ukraine, Russia has become an ever more important partner in China's push against American might. Economic ties have been growing stronger, and there are signs of deepening military links. So far this month, America has twice tightened sanctions on Sino-Russian trade. Mr. Xi's government has responded furiously, urging the West to stop smearing and containing China. So this is according to the economics. China will be Mr. Putin's first destination abroad after they call it a sham election, just like they called the elections in Syria sham, that gave him a 5th term as president. There is symmetry of sorts with the meeting in 2023. That came just after China's parliament had given its rubber stamp approval for Mr. Xi to break precedent and serve a 3rd term as president, and days after the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Mr. Putin for war crimes in Ukraine. For both men, their encounters are a display of contempt for the West's effort to hobble autocrats. They really believe in the economics that the issue and the problem that the West has against Russia and China because they're autocratic, as if their allies are not autocratic. The United States has just pick and choose the worst dictatorship in the world. You will find that the Americans are backing him. That's why, guys, you come to alternative websites and alternative podcasts like Syriana Analysis, because they're not really telling you the truth, right? They're not telling you the core of the issues, the geopolitical conflicts, the financial interests, etc. And here we present to you a bigger picture. I truly believe that we do better jobs than these journalists in The Economist, in the Financial Times, in the New York Times, etc., etc. We do a better job in informing the people. They are not informing the people. They are disinforming the people, and sometimes not informing them at all about the realities. And why the entire world now is pissed off with this, American dominance and hegemony and their arms around the world, because they have arms. The empire has arms. They have financial arms. They have civil society arms. They have political, military, all sorts. And since I mentioned the civil society, they have been financing with hundreds of millions of dollars so-called civil societies in the former Soviet Union countries in order to turn the people of these countries against Russia. So they become naturally anti-Russian. And they succeeded in managing many of the countries. And this led into what is called the color revolutions, because the people who initiate and manage these revolutions are the people who are trained by American funded and financed organizations. Some of them are from the European Union, others from George Soros organizations. So they teach them about how to democratize their countries, how to push against the government policies, how to organize their ranks, how to go to protests, and how to demand, and what slogans to raise, and when it is possible, how to use violence. And nowadays, Georgia, the current government in Georgia, it seems that they have had enough of this meddling in their affairs, and they see that since the independence of Georgia, many of the so-called civil society organizations in Georgia have received money with hundreds of millions from the NED, the USAID, the Soros organizations, and so many others. They have decided that enough is enough, and they will issue a law. And this is this law is about foreign agent bill. The foreign agent bill, they will require these organizations to be transparent and show the source of the income. Where do you get your donations? Who's paying for you, right? And this is why you see all these demonstrations now in Georgia by these civil society people pushing against this law. And they call it a Russian-inspired bill, or it's the Russia bill. Now they accuse Russia. I mean, let's suppose that this bill is supported by Russia, by the Kremlin, by Putin himself. He is behind it. Don't you want to have a law in your country which tells you that these organizations have to be transparent and show the source of their income? Who is paying you? Like, this law will be applied on all civil society organizations. So if there is a civil society organization that is financed by Russia, then they have to be transparent to the government and tell them we are receiving funds from Russia. And similarly, they have to show that they're receiving from the United States. So this should be a no-brainer, in my opinion. And if similar law is adopted in Armenia, my fatherland, it will be a scandal. It will never be adopted because the Soros people and the civil society people are in power at the moment. But if and when this Pashinyan government is, when they leave power, there has to be a law like this, foreign agent law. Show us your source of income. Who's paying you, the Kremlin or the Congress or the CIA? Show us, right? This would be in the scandal. Because you will see the number of the organizations and the so-called civil society organizations that are funded by the EU and the United States are probably 90 to 95% compared to what Russia is financing and supporting in these countries. It's crazy how much money they spend on these countries. And by the way, the EU has a similar law adopted on the European Union level. Ursula von der Leyen, she said the idea of adopting such a law was to excuse Vladimir Putin and his financing in Europe, right? So they have such a law in the European Union, but they are pushing against it. Even officials from Germany, they're in Georgia supporting the protesters against the Georgian government. I mean, I thought that under a democracy, the parliament has the right to adopt laws. Like, this is why there is election. And this election, which the people chose and picked this government, they came to power and they adopted a law. Those are the representatives of the Georgian people which adopted this law, right? But democracy doesn't mean anything to them when you vote for a law and adopt a bill that doesn't align with their interests. America has a similar law, the foreign agent law. It's normal. Every country needs to have such a law. If you're receiving funds from foreign countries or foreign people with invested interests, you have to show your source of income, right? This is a no-brainer, unfortunately, but I see so many people are hyped about this Georgian case, and it just really bothers me because how is it possible if I was a Georgian not want such a law? Anyways, guys, I'm very thankful that we have around 1,000 people watching this live streaming on different platforms. I would really appreciate it if you hit the like button before you leave this live streaming. And if you'd like to support independent work that I'm doing like this, you can become a patron, guys. The link is scrolling on the screen. It's www.patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. And I will see you tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time. Peace be upon you, upon your families. Salam.